Use headphones for best experience.
When the fog rolled in, the first man we buried walked out of the harbor that night. At first, we told ourselves it was grief, or drink, or the tricks fog plays on tired eyes. But by the second bell, more shapes were standing on the water, and no one could lie to themselves anymore. Fog took the harbor early, a worn bandage wrapped too tight around Greyhook. The channel marker's bell sounded wrong under it, like a cough-through felt. We cut the outboard and let the skiff drift into the lee of Gull Key, where the lighthouse rose from black rock like a broken tooth. Creosote, eelgrass, old diesel, a smell you never quite wash out. "Here," Whit McKenna said, easing the tiller with those iron-colored knuckles of his. "Make it fast, tide's playing games." We hadn't come for ashes. Evan Pike had gone over with his pots in March and did not come back. We brought what stood for him: his orange jacket, the multi-tool that pinched your fingers, a strip of fare tickets he never used, and Whit's last net bundle. The old folks still tie one and cut the floats so it cannot fish. It is how you tell the water you are done asking. June Park carried the satchel tight to her ribs. Marco Alvarez hefted the net. Devin Hale had flares stuck into the front of his oilskin like cigarettes. I had a coil of rope and my mother's knife, and that brand of anger that can pass for courage if you walk away alive. The iron steps were slick with weed and gull mess. We climbed because the living always climb. On the catwalk, the world narrowed to gray light and planks and the blind lantern room. June shook sand from Evan's jacket and folded it small. She set the ticket strip on top, and the Zippo he used to show off at Sylvia's, the silver scraped to plain metal. "Do it, Riley," she said. I ran the head rope through the lowest rung and snugged a knot by habit. Marco paid the mesh over the side until it hung like a dark curtain. I cut 2 corks so it would never catch. We stood with our hands on cold iron and listened to the buoy cough in the fog. It felt like saying amen without the words. Halfway down the tower, something waited at the tide line that did not belong. A little boat sat neatly in a comb of eelgrass, the sort boys race in the ditch when spring breakup floods it. Red hull, paper sail laminated in tape. I did not need to turn it over to know my 4th grade block letters were burned into the bottom. Riley. Devin started to ask if I had brought it. I said no and told him to get in the boat. Whit pushed us clear with an oar. Gull Key faded until even the iron seemed a rumor. Back in Greyhook, the warm square of Sylvia's diner cut the fog. People glanced up when we came in. A small-town glance gives you space and inventory in the same motion. Sylvia poured coffee the color of the harbor and said, "You heard the bell?" "Out by the quay," Whit answered. She shook her head. "I mean here." That night, the kettle in my mother's kitchen whistled at 2 in the morning on a cold burner. I ran in and found steam drawing a small boat on the window, erasing it, drawing it again. When I set my palm to the kettle, it felt like a rock left all day in sun. I said Evan's name to the empty room, and the sound moved through the house until the house made its own shape around it, smaller. The bell started at dusk the next evening. The note came from everywhere, and the inside of your chest. People drifted toward the pier, holding mugs and reasons. Whit had tarred line over his shoulder and the quiet look he wore when weather had ignored its chart. They arrived on the 3rd note. Not movie rot. These were drowned. Flesh pale and water swollen, as if lacquered. Eyes lit from a place they did not own. They stood 3 feet off the stones as if the harbor wore a hidden shelf. 7 figures at first. You could match them by posture even before your brain let the names surface. Mrs. Kerr with her cautious hip, the Boudreaux boy with the cowlick he never outgrew, a tall shape with a thumbnail split in exactly the place Evan always split his. No one screamed. Whit counted under his breath and worked knots into twine without glancing down. The bell went quiet and they sank together. They did not dive. They went through like air and water had agreed to trade places. We rigged old net along the pier before the next dusk, float to float, lead line kissing stone, tied to cleats, pot davits, the old bollard with the ring mark from the whaler days. No one asked why a trap town had that much illegal mesh tucked away. Everyone knew why. Quotas and bad years and the lies you can salt because they keep. Night 2, the drowned pressed the mesh. The net bowed and made a cable song. A hand slid cleanly through a square and found Devon's belt. He brought the oar down hard, and we all heard something in a jaw give. It did not cry. It reset. It tried again. We held. After a long minute, they let go, as if they had learned what the net would do. "Not enough," Whit said, squinting across the channel toward the quay. "We take it to the light. We carried what you carry when you go somewhere you do not intend to stay." Sylvia's generator thumped against my knee. Marco humped a spool of freezer lights. Devon slung flares. There was duct tape, a 5-gallon drum of diesel, more mesh than good sense. We ran lights along the catwalk and down the iron stairs until the bulbs made a dotted path to the landing. We slung a shallow curve of net from the tower base to a natural seam in the rock so that the safe place felt safe until you were standing in the pocket. The bell rose from under the stone. It was not a noise, it was a pressure that found your teeth. The first drowned came up inside the pocket, 5 inches from my boots. A woman with seaweed threaded into her braid, then another and a third, and then the tall one whose nailed thumbnail matched a memory. "Hold," Whit said, quiet and unhurried. We braced the head rope. The drowned leaned. The mesh remembered old tricks and then learned new ones. Faces pressed until the squares marked cheek and lip like rubbings. The line scorched across my palms. Devon jammed the gaff under it to give us a lever. Marco heaved the bitter end through a fair lead we had not trusted in 10 years. June said Evan's name into that wet iron air like you plant a flag. "Back," I told them. "Back with me." They climbed. Not fast, not reckless. They moved with that terrible confidence of something certain of its weight. A hand reached through and found my jacket, pulled. I drove my mother's knife down and felt gristle part and the grip open, black water pumping around the blade like oil from a cut hose. The drowned dropped out of sight and then lifted again from below, reaching in the same practiced shape. Another set of hands closed on Devon's calf and bit through rubber and cloth. He made a sound you make when you are still in control of your voice and wish you were not. He stamped until teeth came away with thread. "Flares," Whit said. Marco cracked red and fired. The star hit the slick between floats and burned where gasoline always finds its way. Heat shoved our faces back. The drowned shuddered, not as if afraid, but as if watching a physics trick. The net bowed another inch. The pocket wanted to fold into the sea. "Anchor it," I called. We shoved the drum to the ladder base and ratchet strapped the head rope to it. The mesh held, then screamed like steel under cold. The drowned surged together, a change that felt like a thought moving through a crowd. They found the seam. It had looked like rock. It was an agreement we had not read closely enough. Pressure hit, and every knot we had tied became a question. The rope ripped through my hands. Skin came with it in ragged paper. June had threaded her fingers into the mesh. On the other side, a palm matched hers. Wrong eyes above it, right split nail below. "Please," she said. It could have been to him, or to me, or to the water. "June," I told her, "look at me." She did. The drown pulled. Devon grabbed the back of her belt. The net slid toward the pocket like a curtain on fire. The drum skittered in diesel and salt. I cut the head rope. The snap cracked like a rifle in a barn. Mesh collapsed into the pocket. Pressure went with it. Most hands fell away. One small grip held June for an extra beat and then released, leaving a slick thread of clear stuff that smoked in cold air. "Inside," Whit said, already dragging the generator toward the door. We made a barricade out of whatever would submit. The generator. A trunk full of gear that predated us, a busted stool, our weight and breath. We ran for the spiral. The drowned came after us. Stairs feel like safety until numbers teach numbers. The first body crested the lip with that wrong patience. Devon met it with the oar. the blade stuck in its mouth. It climbed the oar like a rung, and I stamped its face and watched it flip down a flight and rest for half a second, then rise as if that second were a breath it had needed to remember. "Eyes or hinge," Wit said. He swung the fire axe into the corner of a grin that had once belonged to someone with a voice. The head cocked and stayed that way. The body folded. Another took its place and pushed its shoulder under the first. Devon drove the boat hook at an angle until the point found what we wanted and wrenched. Marco took a bite through his sleeve and shouted that short, ugly sound, hit until teeth came away with cloth and some of his skin. Blood speckled the glass like rain. June struck a flare and held it out like a torch. Heat made the drowned stagger, a mirage in human shape. She shoved a second flare into my palm. The freezer lights on the stairs hiccuped and went dead, as if something had pinched a line. "Choke the generator," I yelled. "It is on the door," Wit said. That ended the question. The lantern room glass chimed once under a heavy palm. The panes smeared and bloomed a starburst of salt. The barricade groaned. A hinge made the long, tired cry of something asked to work after it should have retired. "Infection check," I said. Sometimes saying the rule is the only way to keep it real. Marco rolled his sleeve. Teeth marked shallow, already purple. Devon lifted his pant leg. 2 clean arcs around the calf, the skin already cool under my fingers. "Tourniquet," Wit said. "It is too low," I answered. "We would take the leg." "Then burn it," he said. "Same rule as traps. If it won't bend at the hinge, you fix it with heat." June shoved a flare at me and bit on a rag. I pressed the fire to Devon's skin. The sound it made was a dream you hope you do not revisit. He stayed conscious and later wished he had not. The door shuddered. 2 bolts tore through wet wood. The generator skidded in a straight line the length of its own cord. Outside, hands found iron. The bell rang in our teeth. Marco's eyes went to the drum of diesel. "Fuel," he said, coughing. "Make them not want this place." We set the chain on the door, cracked it a hand's breadth, tipped the drum and let a sheet of bright run across rock into the pocket. Hands groped the slick like seals. June dropped a flare. Fire crawled fast, hungry and low. Heat pushed into the stairwell. The glass crazed and wept. Something below made a sound like pressure venting from a pipe, not pain. "Up," Wit said. We climbed into a room so hot the lens itself felt alive. Moths battered the old glass as if they had misunderstood the invitation of light. Through a wrinkle of heat, the tall, drowned lifted his face and met June's eyes. Recognition moved there without language. "Stay," she whispered to an arrangement of muscle and intent that had already changed its mind about being a person. Diesel burns quickly. The dark returned as if nothing had happened. The bell made one soft kitchen sound and stopped. Below us, the thing that had been learning how to take the stairs forgot the lesson. "Slack," Wit said, reading a water we could not see. "We go now, or we do not go." We took the spiral through smoke. The barricade sagged in salt starbursts. The landing was a skillet and the metal left its heat in our boots. We hit the skiff with a clatter, shoved off on muscle memory, and the outboard coughed itself awake after 2 false tries. They rose under us. A left hand floated up and settled on the gunwale like a swimmer catching breath. Another found the bow and leaned. The skiff listed. I brought the oar down and felt bone give like wet chalk. The hand slid off. Another found my wrist and teeth tapped air. I ripped back, and June fired the flare gun directly into an open mouth. The red light went down and burned somewhere a throat remembered being. It did not end the matter. Wit hauled the cord like he meant to scald it, and the prop bit deep. The skiff shouldered free. We bumped the channel marker, and the bell called our location with no sense for tact. The drowned did not follow as quickly as we left. Greyhook rose ahead like a photograph you are not ready to tear up. Faces crowded the pier, which is to say all of them. Tires took the bump. Hands pulled. We did not stop moving until Sylvia's door took us in and closed. We did a kind of first aid that would make a nurse leave. Marco's forearm showed shallow dents that had already gone oddly cool. We cleaned and wrapped what could be wrapped. Devon's calf looked like a burn under a burn. June's wrists still wore a small pale handprint. Perfect. They are not ghosts, I told the room, because naming things can calm them. Bodies that learned new rules. They push, they bite, they learn faster than we want. Eyes or the hinge stops them. Heat buys time. Sylvia poured coffee like it had gravity and said, "We build the wall now." She did not ask for votes. Trap frames and chain link, floodlights along the breakwater, flares on the hour, hooks only, no hero swims, and we stopped lying to ourselves. We built as if a storm had already arrived, pot frames stacked like teeth. Chain link wired to uprights and tied to anything that had ever been bolted down. Generators idled with those stubborn little hiccups all old generators have. Floodlights pushed angry halos into fog. Children chalked stand lines where feet would go if the fence bowed. The sheriff came and kept quiet. It was enough. By dusk, the bell had tuned itself to our bones. The first row of drowned took their places at the waterline outside the chain link and put fingers through, as if they were front rail at a show. They pushed together. The fence groaned. We braced on chalk lines and leaned back with all the weight God gave us. Diesel slicks took flame and flares blossomed. We learned to step on wrists, hook and pull, keep our feet no matter what the water wanted us to do. Marco's fever rose the way something leaks, small increments you do not notice until the floor is wet. The veins around the bite darkened like ink wicking uphill. He licked salt from his lips and said he could hear the bell when no one else could. "Isolation," Sylvia said. She pointed to the bait shed. "You're in there with me and a hook." Marco laughed because the other choice was break. "If I go dumb," he said, "hinge or heat, don't wait." "Don't you dare," June told both of us without meeting our eyes. Around midnight, the bell shifted key. The drowned pressed together, learned together. The chain link bowed. A wire clip popped and shaved a crescent out of Whit's ear. The first row set faces to the fence and held the way cattle do when they recognize the gate that means pasture. A boy in a red raincoat slipped through near the bollards and moved wrong fast. He made straight for June. I met him with the oar, a clean blow I hated for feeling practiced. He tried to rise because that is what they do now. I brought the blade down again. He did not rise. By 2, the water fell away and left a lace of weed on the wire and a spill of teeth like shells. We sat in Sylvia's with paper cups and radios that would not admit to being dead. Marco's fever cracked and then steadied. The veins faded one shade. We did not say the word cure. We said watch and meant it. Toward morning, wet footprints appeared for the last 6 feet of pier, 2 sets side by side, strides matched, heel wear identical. They ended at the edge where boats lie against the rubber. I set my boot into the next empty place and watched water gather in the print from nowhere I could point to. No one is safe. That is not a box you check once and file. We hold anyway. We stack pots along the rail like a jaw. We keep flares in coffee cans. We teach children where to brace and where never to put a hand. When the bell calls, we answer. Eyes or hinge. Heat buys time. If infection takes one of ours, we do not lie and we do not wait. At noon, someone left a toy boat on my step with a red hull and a wrinkled paper sail. On the bottom, a word had been burned with a hand too much like mine. Stay. I set it on the mantel as if it were a dare, then walked back to the wall. Night gives us the same choice every time. We stand and count. We learn that the fence can hum like a throat when enough hands touch it. We learn that diesel smoke sits low in the lungs and tastes like coin. We learn that some faces return looking more like themselves when you are tired, and that guilt is a tide with its own moon. Marco says the bell is quiet inside his head now. The bite looks old and newer at once. We keep him on a short leash and a long hook because rules are cheaper than luck. June wears the salt white handprint like a bracelet. Whit says little and finds the place where the chain will fail before the chain knows it. The last time the fog thinned, we found 2 wet lines on the pier again, same stride, same heel wear, ending in the same place. Someone had set 3 stones in a neat row on the bollard. They were warm when I touched them. I left them there and did not ask why. You tell yourself the breakwater keeps the ocean out. You stand there long enough and you understand it keeps something else in. Tonight, we will be on the wire as the lights hum and the bell tests our teeth. If it sounds and no one else hears it, I will go anyway. That is the job. That is Greyhook.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.